Alright, YouTube, we were back, of course, talk about some Final Fantasy VII. State of Play was yesterday. We did not make a video because, well, there's nothing to talk about, at least on our end. And for me, it was just kind of an underwhelming State of Play. Like, the most interesting thing for me was the fucking Days Gone remaster. It was a cool game. I'll probably buy that. So on the Square Enix side of stuff, we're still in the dark. We don't really know what the plans are going forward right now with this company. Every time a gaming event happens, they don't show up. We're just left even more disappointed. There's still the very slightly rumored, like, Square Enix dedicated event that's supposed to be happening this month. Whether or not that happens remains to be seen. We still have like half the month left. There's also a very heavily rumored Nintendo Direct this month that may or may not happen, so Square Enix could have stuff there potentially if they're looking towards the Switch 2, which also is what people have been saying for a while, that maybe they're not showing anything right now because they're waiting for the Switch 2. Anyways, what we have today is Tyler Hoechlin, voice of Sephiroth, talking briefly about Sephiroth at a Comic-Con panel last year. This is something I was actually already aware of back then, because there's a Reddit post that I seen about it that actually ended up linking to the YouTube video of the panel itself. And I want to talk about it, never did, because it's like, I think maybe the first time that he's ever like talked about Sephiroth, at least that I'm aware of. He's never gone to any of the Square Enix stuff. Anytime that there's like Cody and Britt and, you know, Brian and John and all them at these like game events and panels and shit, we've never had Tyler. So I don't know if he's ever actually talked about Sephiroth that much at all. And then I do want to give some credit to Shinark for tweeting this out a handful of days ago, because it reminded me of this, but also put a lot of like attention on this like subject of, you know, Tyler talking about Superman and also Sephiroth. But I was already aware of this like half a year ago. I'll bring that up because I'd rather just play a clip from the panel itself and just hear what Tyler says verbatim, as opposed to just reading what Shinark tweeted out. The clip itself's not very long, but he's asked what it's like playing the hero in Superman, but also the villain in Sephiroth, and who'd win in a fight between those two characters, which is a subject I'm very much interested in talking about. So as per usual, we'll play the clip and then we'll talk about it.
Hi, this is a question for Tyler. You played both classic hero in Superman, but also legendary villain in Sephiroth. How do you compare playing these two different roles, and who do you think would win in a fight between your two versions?
I mean,
reminders.
Superman's winning. Yeah, I know. Superman's winning that fight, in my opinion. But no, I mean, it was very cool. Like I said, so being able to play the hero in one thing and then playing the, you know, this iconic villain in another piece, really fun. Totally different vibes with the two characters. So being able to balance in between the two of those. It's also funny. It's kind of like you kind of need black and white for contrast, and so there were times where I'd actually do the voice of that character while we were filming, and it was a nice being able to look in the mirror and see like, okay, so this is Sephiroth, which emphasized certain things about Clark and about Superman and vice versa. So it was really fun to have those two things to bounce between.
So I thought that was pretty interesting that he's kind of brought Sephiroth to the Superman and Lois show, which I've never really watched. I've not watched a lot of the DC stuff that's on CW. I watched like the first like probably season or two of like Arrow, and then I might have watched some of the other shit here and there. And I think I've seen like clips of episodes of Superman and Lois, but I've not watched the show itself, right? So I just don't really know much about it. I want to watch it at some point just because it is Tyler Hoechlin. I do like that when it comes to these two iconic characters that he's portraying, he's not just, you know, isolated. He's not just doing Superman over here, Sephiroth over here, right? Like he's actually bringing aspects of both characters to each role. So like whenever he's recording for Sephiroth, he's probably incorporating stuff he does for like Clark Kent and, you know, Superman and stuff. As he mentioned, he brings aspects of Sephiroth over to Clark Kent and Superman as well. And as you mentioned, it's good to have like the black and the white, right? The good and the bad when it comes to that shit. And it's going to help with like acting, like, because I know there's iterations of, you know, Superman where he's like, you know, temporarily like evil or being mind controlled and is a bad guy sort of thing. And that might happen in the show. I have no idea. I've never watched it. But if that did happen in the show, like having portrayed Sephiroth, who is a, you know, pretty goddamn evil character, that's got to help with portraying like a kind of evil Superman if he's done that. But also portraying Superman, who's this like all-time good guy superhero character, probably helped with like showing the good side of Sephiroth that we see in stuff like Crisis Core Union in the beginning of Rebirth, right? Where he is like, you know, he's a hero in this world, but he's also technically kind of a good guy at that point, right before, you know, he kind of kills everybody. I'll back to what Tyler said. I can see how each character would kind of help with the other in different ways. Now, for the conversation of Sephiroth versus Superman, who would win in that fight, I am going to agree with Tyler in this case, because there's not a single goddamn chance that Sephiroth could beat Superman in a fight. Now, we are, of course, talking about fictional characters here, so none of this shit even matters. But I figured we'd actually discuss this, because Superman is, like, one of the most broken, like, fictional characters of all time. Like, it's kind of, like, the entire point of the character in a lot of ways, right? He just has no limits. That's why a lot of people aren't fans of Superman, just because he has no limits. It's not interesting. It's almost, he's just, like, super overpowered, right? He has, like, ridiculous feats, just depending on what comic book iteration you're looking at. Like, back in the day, the early days of Superman, he could, like, sneeze away solar systems, which is just like absurd. You really like a feat you'd bring up too often these days because that's like golden age, early days Superman type shit, right? It's not something you see modern day Superman doing. He's not going around sneezing away solar systems and galaxies and shit. This is something I wanted to bring up just to show off like some of the absurd shit the character is capable of. You also have him lifting the Book of Infinity. As you might expect, this is a book with infinite pages, thus it has infinite weight, and Superman was able to lift that. Yeah, Shazam was there, but does that matter? It's infinite. He could have the entire goddamn DC roster. It shouldn't be possible, but it is. Some other random feats of the character of Superman is he's held a black hole in his hand, he's punched through time and space, he's held up the heavens for Atlas, he can move faster than the speed of light. Specifically that last panel I showed, that's whenever Superman is controlled by Darkseid and he has to go to the Source Wall to get the Highfather staff. And he does it in a matter of seconds. And the Source Wall is essentially like if you were to go to like the limits, the edge of the multiverse. He does that in seconds. So like he's actually several times over faster than the speed of light. Now that's just to kind of show some of the ridiculous things that Superman is capable of. When it comes to superhero feats in a comic, it's really up to the writer of that particular comic, which is why you see some ridiculous shit sometimes. But regardless of all that, Sephiroth has like no real insane feats really when you think about it when it comes to the FF7 story. For one, he's not even like the strongest villain in the series. He's not even like really close to it. You can really think about it. What is Sephiroth's like greatest feat of strength or destruction? Would it be Meteor? I guess maybe that's that, but that's also the Black Materia. It's not really him. Maybe you got to be a certain level of like strength or power or something to be able to use the Black Materia. I don't know if that's ever defined or anything, but still, that's the meteor he's summoning from space that's going to destroy the world, not Sephiroth himself. Like in Final Fantasy IX, you have Kuja, who can destroy an entire planet by himself, right? He destroys Terra once he's in his trance state. You also have like Ultimecia in Final Fantasy VIII with time compression, where she's going to collapse every goddamn timeline into one timeline. She might actually be the strongest. I don't know. Whereas Sephiroth got attacked from behind by a teenage kid, right? I know he's infatuated and distracted by Jenova, but still, you think being a war hero, he could have heard that or predicted that. Also, if that was Superman, for one, he would have hurt him because he got super hearing, but also the blade wouldn't even fucking pierce his skin. If we move up to the remake games, we don't entirely know what Sephiroth's capabilities are just yet because we haven't got to the last game of the trilogy, right? But we do see him potentially doing some multiversal shit, which is interesting. In terms of the actual strength, though, he like struggles to like slice the weapon in the live stream whenever Tifa's in there. Like he has to like slice it, and he has to like jam the sword to get the slice to go all the way through the enemy, right? Whereas again, if this was Superman, he'd fucking tear the weapon in half with his bare hands. Sephiroth isn't even like really that physically strong if he's going to struggle with the weapons. Like the only things that are kind of in his favor is this is a Final Fantasy game, Final Fantasy world, so there is magic, and magic is capable of damaging Superman. It's not that he's weak to it, it's just possible to damage him with it, right? He's vulnerable to it. And then Sephiroth also has like illusion magic. We don't really see that in the remake games that much. I don't think we see it at all really. But if you could maybe put Superman in some sort of illusory world and then attack him with a bunch of magic, maybe he could do some damage to him. He's not going to fucking kill him. Again, we don't know like the true strength of Sephiroth totally until we get to the third game, right? And see what like is actually going on and what kind of like the limits of his powers are, what he's capable of, because he's definitely like probably the strongest version of Sephiroth right now, I would say, from the entire compilation, right? But what can he actually do? What is he actually doing? There's still a lot of unknowns right now, even though we are 2/3 of the way through a trilogy. We don't really entirely know what's going on, but this is maybe a subject we could revisit once the trilogy is done, once we've seen maybe the limits of Sephiroth's power, if he has any new like abilities or capabilities that we've not seen him do before. I don't think the conversation changes much, but it would be fair to give him like all of his capabilities before we like talk about it really. But still, it's Superman. That's kind of it for that discussion. Did we talk about it too much? Probably, but that's really the motivation for me to make this video. I want to talk about that a little bit. It was nice to hear Tyler talk about the character Sephiroth because I don't know how often he's ever done that, at least publicly. Maybe like other conventions and stuff, meet and greets, people have asked him about Sephiroth, but I don't know how, like on the record, on video and stuff, him talking about Sephiroth. I just don't know how often he's ever done that, if at all. I don't really know why that is. I don't know if that's like an intentional thing because he's the villain of the games. Maybe he doesn't want to talk about the character. He wants to like stay the villain, stay in the shadows type of shit. I don't know if there's like a meta thing to it. Or if maybe he's just busy. He's obviously been doing like, you know, the CW Superman shit for a while now. Maybe he's just got a really busy schedule. I don't know if he does other shit besides the show, like other acting gigs or something. No idea. But I do hope that going into the marketing for the third game, whether that's before the game comes out or after the game comes out, I do hope he goes to like some Square Enix panels and shit and talks about the character Sephiroth. Something I really, really want. It's something I feel like is missing a bit from the marketing of the remake games is we don't have the guy that's voicing the antagonist of the game with the rest of the group. We don't have him at panels talking about the game, talking about the characters and his thoughts on the character of Sephiroth and whatever, right? We just don't get any of that. We haven't had any of that, again, 2/3 of the way through this trilogy. It's something I hope changes with the third game, and I think the Superman show he's on is come to an end, right? I think it's over. So maybe if he was busy, he won't be now, and he can be a part of the marketing for the third game, which I would absolutely fucking love. I like Cody Christian. Like, I'd like to get more of him, too, talking about the character. I know he comes to some of these showcases and panels sometimes, right? But a lot of times it's like John and Brianna and like Susie and sometimes Britt and some of the other voice actors, right? But it's like I want like Cloud and Sephiroth at these panels. I want to hear those guys talk about those characters in the games. We're talking about the protagonists and the antagonists of these games, and if they're busy, they're busy. There's nothing you can really do about it, right? But I just would like to see them more in the overall marketing, at least for the third game. My dudes, that'll be the video. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new to us, in the description below. Follow me on Twitter, @SaveYT. That's it. Bye.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Logain, or leave it like Cobain.